Business owners, managers, and employees are usually painfully aware of how difficult it can be to maintain a stable flow of work. Heijunka is a lean method for reducing the unevenness in a process and minimizing the chance of having more work than we can handle, or not enough to keep us productive. The term Heijunka is a Japanese term that means leveling, and it can help us to react to demand changes and utilize our capacity in the best possible way. In North America, Heijunka is more commonly referred to as load leveling, and it refers to the balanced volume or workload within a process. Balancing a process reduces the non-value-added portion of the process and removes the waste of items waiting in queue so that we can efficiently meet customer demands while avoiding unnecessary costs and time. Follow along with the charts in your workbook. Let's say a hat maker receives orders for 500 of the same hat per week. 200 orders on Monday, 100 on Tuesday, 50 on Wednesday, 100 on Thursday, and 50 on Friday. Instead of trying to meet demands in sequence of the orders, the hat producer would use Heijunka to level demand by producing an inventory of 100 hats near shipping to full Monday's orders. Every Monday, 100 hats will be in inventory. The rest of the week, production will make 100 hats per day, a level amount. By significantly reducing waste and the excess of physical inventories that can result when we don't have level loading, a company can improve its cash flow and lower its costs. Consider the fact that when work goes uncompleted, it cannot produce revenue. Now, let's talk about the concept of batching.
Imagine that you work in a busy high-rise building in a city, and you are trying to get to your office quickly. You have an option to take the elevator or the escalator. If you choose the escalator, you step right on it and it takes you directly to your desired floor. Each individual gets on and off when they are ready, one at a time. If you choose the elevator, you wait outside the elevator, usually waiting as more people accumulate, until the elevator door opens. The group or batch of people get on the elevator together. You may have to stop at multiple floors before getting to your destination. There are advantages and disadvantages of each option. And that's our topic for this section. What's the right solution for your process to increase flow and to minimize or eliminate waste?
Most companies, especially manufacturing ones, resort to a batch approach, thinking that it's a cost-effective solution. Batching is popular because there are minimal costs due to changeovers, and there's prepared stock to meet customer demand. But these assumed benefits can actually do your company more harm than good. When you batch your production, you can experience some significant issues.
Firstly, the inability to respond to changing customer demand. No matter how many forecasts we produce, it is very hard to predict and be certain of customer demand. There will always be fluctuations and variations. If we consistently produce in batches, we may lose the opportunity to provide the customer with a product that they actually want, simply because we are not producing it at that time.
Next is capital being tied to inventory. Because companies want to make sure they have enough stock to provide to customers, they produce large quantities. But these effectively get stored as inventory and don't make the company any money until it eventually gets sold. There can be instances where the company needs to sell the products just to free it up. This is certainly not ideal in terms of profitability.
Overworked machines and personnel. Producing in large quantities every time can eventually lead to machines and staff breakdowns. This can also affect the quality of the final goods, which can lead to more wastes. These are the main problems that Heijunka aims to solve. Heijunka allows companies to produce as close as possible to what demand dictates. This is done by producing smaller batches and creating different types of product at one time. Companies can be more flexible to demand changes, minimize inventory, and balance out the use of its resources with this approach. A Heijunka box is a scheduling tool used to visualize the work items that need to be completed to meet your average customer demand. Basically, it's a system that visualizes each product's orders, and according to the average demand, it levels a production sequence for achieving an optimal flow.
Take the example of a textile firm struggling to keep up production with the demands. If customer demand of a garment is 15 pieces on one day, and then the demand fluctuates by 3-4 pieces per day, the company can use the Heijunka method to control this variation. They can set the level volume at 15 garments per day according to demand. Production would replenish the 15 garments that are ordered. On the second day, if the order is 19 garments, 4 higher than levelized production volume, the company would still produce 15 garments and the shipping area would take 4 garments from an inventory known as fluctuation stock. On the third day, if the order will be 13 garments, which is 2 less than the Heijunka volume, 2 garments can be rebuilt and put back into fluctuation stock. This is a very basic idea of how the concept works. The Heijunka method of manufacturing can be deceptively simple, but pretty complex when it's fully realized. It starts by measuring takt time. That's the time it takes to manufacture a specific product, ship it, and get it into the hands of the customer. It's the rate at which customers buy a product. Once you know the takt time for every product your company creates, the next step is easy. Work slowly.
Each week, take your time and manufacture only enough product to cover demand and takt time. If there's a surge in consumer demand, simply manufacture more of the product over the next week. If you keep a small amount of safety stock, this approach keeps manufacturing patterns predictable, stable, and still flexible, which is exactly what we are aiming for. While Heijunka is not exactly rocket science, applying it to real-life production situations can be more complex than we can imagine. It might take a while before you actually get a hang of this. It's important to stay attuned to customer demand and adjust your process as needed. It should also be the company's priority to continuously improve and optimize their operations so that a more leveled workflow is established. Applying Heijunka can be a trial and error situation. Don't expect to nail it the first time either. But once the company has it in place, they can be sure to reap the benefits of a more standardized workflow.
Takt time is a key factor to understand when you're working to load level. It's the calculated pace required for production based on the average speed at which the customer is buying. The formula is net available time to produce per time period divided by customer demand per time period. Now, follow this calculation in your workbook. Net available time is 450 minutes per shift. The customer demand is 150 pieces per shift. So the takt time is 3 minutes per piece. That means that in order for us to keep up with the demand, we need the cycle time to produce a single piece to be 3 minutes or less. Takt time is not a measure, it's a calculation. It's not the time it takes to perform a task and is only reduced or increased by changes in the factors. The production demand or net available time to work. Takt is a German word for beat or rhythm, and it's often likened to an orchestra conductor keeping time.
Another concept under the topic of load leveling is single piece flow. Fundamentally speaking, all aspects of Lean Six Sigma aim to reduce or ultimately eliminate waste, which we understand comes in various forms. One-piece flow is typically implemented to minimize waste between steps and processes, specifically inventory or work in progress and inactivity. The idea is for a unit in the process to be pulled through each step efficiently. Batch processing, also called batch and queue, is a mass production approach to operations in which large groups or batches of items are processed and moved to the next step, where they wait in a pile or a queue until the next worker is ready to perform the next step. If there were 3 of us working together to send out 1,000 invitations, we might have the following steps. Number 1, put the invitation in the envelope. Number 2, seal and stamp the envelope. And number 3, write the address on the envelope. In a batch process, person A would stuff the envelopes, and when he has a batch done, let's say 100 invitations done, He'd put that pile in the inbox of person B. Then person B would seal and stamp 100 envelopes and put that pile in the inbox of person C. When person C is ready, she would address each envelope. That's batch processing. One-piece flow is producing and moving one item at a time, or a small and consistent batch of items, through a series of processing steps as continuously as possible, with each step making just what is required by the next step. It also is called one-piece flow, single-piece flow, and make one, move one. In our invitation example, each person would complete their step and move to the unit directly to the next station. The skill is making sure that each step can keep up the pace so that the unit flows continuously without waiting. So what's the right batch amount? How many people do we need at each step? How to create a process that flows?
Many years ago, efficiency experts realized that batching had some serious drawbacks, such as customer demand can be really hard to predict. If a buying trend inspires a consumer frenzy over white widgets, the company will need to adjust their process and drastically increase white widget manufacturing, which in turn takes away from black widget manufacturing. Next, unsold goods don't make any money. If the company overproduced white widgets, they need to either throw them away or store them as unsold inventory. That's wasted effort and inefficiency. And also, machines and personnel get overworked very easily. A change in process requires a lot of startup and slowdown time, which can create inconsistent product quality and exhausted equipment and people.
These efficiency experts recognize the drawbacks of batching and believed we could improve efficiency if we could just get everyone to slow down. The famous analogy associated with single-piece flow is the story of the tortoise and the hare. The slower but consistent tortoise causes less waste and is much more desirable than the speedy hare that races ahead and then stops occasionally to doze.
Let's talk about batch processing in the digital workspace. Batch processing is an efficient way of processing large volumes of data. With batch processing, data is collected, entered, and then processed. Afterward, it produces batch results. Payroll and billing systems are beautiful examples of batch processing. Batching means waiting to do everything all at once. Also, it means relying on the ability of your system to handle it all. Batch processing is ideal for processing large volumes of data or transactions. It also increases efficiency rather than processing each individually. With batch processing, we can do the heavy system processing independently, even during less busy times or at a desired designated time. That said, there may be a time delay between the collection of data and completing the process for the whole batch. In the batch processing, the master file is not always kept up to date because of the time delay, and this time delay can be significant if the process time for the large batch is slow.
Real-time processing involves continuous input, process, and output of data. So it processes data or transactions in a very short period of time. Some examples of real-time digital processing include bank ATMs, fraud detection, and point-of-sale or POS systems. In these scenarios, every transaction is immediately processed and updated in the master file, so it'll always be up to date. Real-time processing is best for processing or computing something relatively simple. When we need to compute in near real time, only seconds at most, we go for real-time processing. While performing real-time processing, there is no significant delay in response. In real-time processing, because information is always up to date, it makes the organization able to take immediate action and respond to an event, issue, or scenario in the shortest possible time. It also allows the organization to gain insights and to detect patterns from the real data. The disadvantages are that real-time processing is very complex and it can be a more expensive option.
If the root cause of your problem can be minimized or eliminated by improving the workflow or load leveling, you can explore multiple options, including the topics that we've covered in this section. batch versus single piece flow, Heijunka, designing your process to match the takt time, and determining how it applies physically and digitally. Most processes have a combination of both. Making a decision of selecting the best method depends on your specific scenario. This one-point lesson on load leveling provides a high-level summary of each of these techniques.